get to a place where the way you approach your nails, the way you approach your hair, approach your bank statement. When you go to a bank, you speak to different people from different parts of the bank. When you're speaking to somebody whose job is to lend and their targets are for lending, that's what they're going to do. They're going to give you debt.
What's up, besties, and welcome back to another episode of Marriage and Money, a space where we share real life stories about money matters in a marriage and just in general. The past few weeks, we have shared stories with you guys about how couples handled money in their marriages. I've had a long overdue conversation with my mom about money, which you guys loved. We've spilled one too many secrets about our money mistakes with my husband and just so much more. But this week's episode is different. Today, I'm joined by Refula Mabileta, a qualified chartered accountant as well as chartered financial analyst. She currently works as a private wealth manager with over 13 years experience in the financial services industry. Refula is passionate about bridging the gap in access to financial advice, and she helps her clients achieve their financial objectives. And get this, today, we're going to be Refula's clients. So besties, get excited, grab a pen, grab a piece of paper, bring a snack, and get ready to take that first step to financial freedom and a step closer to building your financial wealth. So hi Refula, welcome, and thank you for taking the time to be part of our video series.
Hi Lorato, thank you so much for inviting me to your home. I'm very happy and very excited to be here.
Yeah, me too. I'm very excited. I wonder how many besties already have like pens and papers. Like I said, they should. Best believe I have a husband behind the scenes taking notes because I'm really excited to hear what you have to share. I don't know if you've seen, but the past maybe 3-4 weeks-ish, we've shared videos from like married couples with the wives, you know, and they were chatting about their money habits in their marriages and how they're spending money and how they're getting out of debt, because let's be real, we need to get out of debt because interest rate is not playing. And if there's ever a time to get out of debt, this is it, you know. And so we've shared videos like that, and I thought, why not bring an expert?
No pressure.
No pressure, but a little bit of pressure though. It's good and well that we're all talking about our bad financial mistakes and, you know, the debt we're in and how we're spending money. But I think it's also, you know, good to look on the bright side to say, okay, now from here onwards, how can we build our own wealth? How can we stack up our money? We all want basements full of money.
Of course.
Yeah.
Who doesn't?
Yeah. So before we get on to all of that fun stuff and, you know, the helpful tips and stuff, can I ask you to just introduce yourself to the besties?
Okay, so I'll do a very quick background. I was born in Soweto, but grew up in Carltonville. I went to school there. I went to boarding school, high school in Poch.
Wow.
I know.
For real?
For real,
Oh,
yes.
wow.
Poch girls,
Wow.
that's right. And then went to UCT.
Yeah.
That's where I did my undergrad. Qualified as a CA. But that doesn't really tell you the kind of person I am. So people who knew me back then will tell you I spend a lot of time alone reading. So I've always been a nerd. I've always loved reading.
Yeah.
In fact, my mother used to, when she went to work during school holidays, she would actually drop me off at the library.
Oh, wow.
And then when she knocked off, she'd pick me up.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
And that was for me the best thing ever. And then the best part and the highlight for me at the end of the day is getting books to then take home and read. So I've always loved reading, was quite academic, not athletic, and then chose the CA profession. To be honest, I didn't really know what it entailed. I think we just had a career guidance day. Somebody mentioned that actuaries and CAs make a lot of money. And
Didn't we all though? We all
Right.
chose, if they said it makes money, like I'm there. That's where I'm going.
Right. And at the time, I mean, accounting was my least favorite subject at school. But I was like, okay, that's it. And I was quite fortunate. I got a bursary and was able to go study that in Cape Town. It was tough. I mean, if I thought accounting was challenging in high school, it was worse.
Oh, wow.
At university. But pushed through, qualified as a CA. But, you know, if something is not your passion and you don't enjoy it, eventually I was not quite happy. but I didn't really know what it is exactly that I wanted to do. And I'm sure we'll speak about this as well, because as CAs, there's almost this expectation that once you qualify, the world is your oyster.
Yes.
You can go anywhere, you can do whatever, and money's going to pour
money's
in.
just falling on your lap.
And money doesn't fall on your lap. In fact, a lot of CAs end up, as soon as they qualify, getting into a lot of debt. They will get that nice car.
Yeah.
They will get that nice house as soon as they qualify. But as I say, it's usually financed through debt. But yeah, so qualified. As I said, a couple of years later then was like, I'm not really happy with this finance thing. Never really loved accounting, was just never my passion. And then fortunately had a conversation with a colleague. It was an actuary actually. And I was saying, you know what? That was the other option, this whole actuarial science thing. So maybe the CA thing is not it. And just from the conversation, he said, just from what you're describing, how you are and what you like, why don't you do CFA? And I was like, oh yeah, I heard about that. There were a couple of people who were studying that during articles. I never really paid too much attention to it. And I think also just having really battled through qualifying as a CA, I think I was also battle scarred. So just the idea of I'm going to take on, and the reputation at the time was that it's so difficult. If you can just pass level 1, you know, that's what people used to say. So I was like, oh no, not another thing. But did my research, looked at the curriculum, and I was like, wow, this is fascinating. Markets, investments, portfolios, opened up a whole new world to me. That's another thing. People assume as CAs that we automatically know everything about finances and investments, and we don't necessarily. There are CAs who might be socialized differently. So in other words, in their homes, they may grow up where around the dinner table, conversations are happening about, I own this share. You know, the parents might have a share portfolio, and if you grow up in that sort of environment where business news and newspapers are around the house and on television, then those CAs, I would imagine, would have a much broader understanding than I did, certainly. So yes, loved it, loved the curriculum, registered, did level 1, level 2, level 3. And then that's when I discovered this whole wealth management thing. And I thought, how's about I go and give people advice on how to manage money? And it was coming at the time from a very naive, altruistic, I'm going to help Black people. I was like, imagine now with all this knowledge and skills, I'm going to go and we're going to help Black people manage their money better. You know, we're going to get out of our situation. As I say, very naive, because the reality is wealth management, a very big component of that is wealth. So you need to have wealth.
You know, and you know, Black people, we're not there yet.
We're not quite there yet. So the challenge was when I made the transition then from finance to wealth management, I just was not prepared. It was a whole new world, a world full of very wealthy people who grew up with wealth, who are very familiar with these terms and just take money for granted. And it was a culture shock. It was deeply challenging for me as well, because I grew up very shy. Wealth management was actually sales. I mean, I remember one of the first times I got a lead to call a client, somebody said this person has 8 million and needs a wealth manager. Call the person. And I remember sitting there and looking at the phone. And I couldn't do it. I was like, I'm not going to call a complete stranger and tell him who I am and that I work for this big bank and that I've got all this knowledge and expertise. I was shaking. And I literally remember speaking to someone else and saying, do you mind making this call for me? And of course, naturally, the person ended up taking the client. But I very quickly learned that in that space, it's about numbers, it's about profits, it's about targets. But I think this conversation certainly is me saying I've done that for several years. I've pushed in my career and I've looked after people's money. And now I'm sort of trying to say, but let's go back to what was it really that inspired you to even follow this path in the first place. And I'm hoping to start doing that.
Throughout that journey, right, you're acquiring all these wealthy clients. One of these days, I swear we're going to be there. Did you deal with like married couples? Did you find people who are wealthy, married, and how do they go about being wealthy? Do you guys have a chat about that?
Oh yes, absolutely. So I mean, you see all kinds of things, right? So you see people who have inherited the wealth. So the parents set up a trust 20 years ago, and what they did is that according to the trust deed, they decide that my children are going to be the people to benefit from this trust. So, I mean, those are the trust fund kids. Remember, we used to use that term.
Yes.
And I used to hear it a lot, and I didn't really understand what it meant. And now those trust fund kids are my clients.
Yeah.
And some of them are 60, 70, and they've never worked a day in their life.
Oh, wow.
Because they were beneficiaries of a trust fund. So you get that aspect where a couple will, as the founders, set up a trust, and then it will be for their children, and then in the event that their children pass on, it will then pass on to the grandchildren, etc. So that's one example I can give you. Another example, typically what you see, especially with people over the age of 50, 60, is the wife will be the stay-at-home, and the husband will be the
So let's say.
And the husband will be the CEO of a mining company. The husband will be an exec somewhere. What I do find a little bit sad about those meetings is oftentimes when I go to their homes, I'll have the conversation with the husband, and the wife will sort of be there in the background.
Oh, yes.
Either making us tea or just minding the home.
The home, yeah.
I mean, the sad reality of that is that in the eventuality that he should pass on first, she's not in the position to know even where to start.
Yeah.
She doesn't know that there's money offshore. She doesn't know where to begin, in essence, winding up his estate, who to call, etc., etc. So that's another example that I see. And then you get power couples. You get those where both of them in their own right are wealthy, and they'll have joint accounts. So maybe they'll do a joint investment offshore, and then locally they might also have a trust that they've set up for the family, but then they'll also have individual investments in their own names. And sometimes you'll deal with one or both, but they tend to be very busy. It's often difficult to find those couples together where they're both available at the same time. So you end up having a meeting either with the wife or the husband. And they tend to, those are the people who their children automatically are going to go study overseas, right?
Yes, of course.
It's a given.
Yeah.
It's a given. And then sometimes you also see the other side where the woman is the one who is maybe not CEO, but quite senior and corporate, and the husband might be like a restaurant owner or... And then there you can even see the power play. She'll make all the decisions. So even in the meeting where I usually would be talking to both of them, she's the one making all the decisions, and he's just there, and it's like, you are late. I remember one couple, it was actually, it was so funny because it was a staff member where I work, and the husband had to come into the office for the meeting, and we were waiting for him to come, and then as soon as he showed up, and she was like, you are late. I was like, okay, you know who is the pants here, you know? Shame. And his whole demeanor the entire meeting would be what you would typically see with the woman, where she's the one basically asking all the questions, making all the final decisions, but he just comes along
because he's the husband.
Because he's the husband.
Has to be there.
He kind of has to. And sometimes if it's a joint investment, we need both signatures. And marital regimes are very important. That's something that plays a huge factor. So for example, if you're married in community of property, and then you now have to go through a divorce, I mean, literally 50-50, we have to divide things. So whether it's local investments, whether it's offshore investments, it doesn't matter what it is. So couples really need to seek the right advice before even tying the knot. And I would also say, get your own, especially the women, just because traditionally, patriarchal society where we come from, women don't have the natural confidence. I'll give you an example. If I go and speak at an event and talk about wealth management, oftentimes the men will be the ones who will come afterwards to ask specific questions. You know, it'll be like, I want to do an investment or I want to draw up a will where I don't leave all the money to my wife. Does my wife have to be part of the discussion? You know, and then I'll be like, no, your wife does not have to be part of the discussion. But very rarely will a woman come and ask me to say, how do I protect myself in the event that this or that happens? Do I know what I need to know? In fact, what don't I know? Because oftentimes it's what you don't know that hurts you.
That comes to you,
Right, but we just haven't been socialized to have that confidence to talk about money. And I think sometimes as women, we almost feel like then you'll be perceived as a gold digger, you'll be perceived as money grabbing, and it's not that at all. It's money, unfortunately, is power, it's influence, it's options, it's choices. And if you've been there for the duration of the marriage, you're equally entitled to what you're supposed to be entitled to, but know upfront before the marriage, but even during the marriage, have the conversations together as a couple, but also have a separate conversation. I would advise, because the men are doing it. I don't have to advise the men to do that. The men are already doing it. But it's the women who must then go and have that conversation to say, is it a good idea to have a joint will, or should I have my own separate will? And in the event that I pass on and we married in community of property, and then everything passes on to him, what happens if he remarries? You know, so those are the types of conversations that women, I feel, need to have more of.
And they're not.
And they're not, because also we get caught up in love and feelings, and I'm so in love.
And he's never going to leave me.
He's never going to leave me. And then by the time you are forced to have that conversation, unfortunately,
it's too late.
The contracts, everything is set up such that it favors him because he sought out the advice.
I want to backtrack a little bit, right? So you did your accounting, you did your chartered accountancy, all of that fun stuff. Now, this has to do with money and financial wellness and all of that, right?
Right.
Did you have any debt going through all of this?
Like, oh, yes.
You did?
Oh, my goodness. The stories I could tell you about money. I mean, horror stories. Let me try and cast my mind back. So the first experience I had with debt was I had an operation when I was at UCT. And the medical aid only paid certain rates. And the specialists were obviously charging 300%, 400% above the medical aid rates. And when the doctor sent me the bill, I mean, I was a student. I think I was doing third year or something at university. And I was like, what? Thousands of rands. I don't have this money. I'm not even working. I just ignored it, just left it alone. Fast forward to 3-4 years later, I'm working, living in Pretoria, doing articles, knock on the door, sheriff, judgment, you owe money. We're coming to attach things in your house because if you don't pay and settle this thing. So that was my first introduction to not only do you owe money, but the interest that's also compounded over the years meant that I ended up paying 3 times what the actual original amount was. But I entered into an arrangement with them. I think I ended up paying over 9,000 rands, but I paid it over time, so I had to do like 500 rand. That's all I could afford. We get paid very little during articles. I think that's all I could really afford. Sometimes what people find is that, realistically speaking, depending on your circumstances and where you come from, this is the only way to get things. So when I first started working, I opened an account Truwords so I could get clothes.
So you can dress the part.
So I can look the part, go to work. I think I opened a furniture one so I could get a fridge, I could get a bed, I could get... But I mean, the rates that these businesses charge for clothing, for furniture, it's not the same as the kind of rate that you'd get to finance a property, which is an actual investment. So yes, there are decisions that I would obviously change, but I was very good and very disciplined with paying off debt. So after that whole shock that I had with the medical experience, after that, all other debt that I got, and eventually, obviously, as more educated and experienced you become, you realize, no, you don't need an account for Truwords. You don't need to finance the purchase of clothing, just lifestyle, credit cards. But I also just want to let the people know that I'm not judging. I also understand for people who say, but I need an outfit so that I can look presentable for a job interview. And then what you do is then maybe 6 months into the job, you then make sure you then pay that down because that is very expensive debt. Good debt is debt that you use to purchase assets like property and things like that. And that's why the bank even allows you to pay that over 20, 30 years. But an account or credit card, you are paying prime plus, like it's ridiculously expensive. And when you look at what you're actually financing, clothes are not assets, they're not investments.
They're not worth that.
Even a nice bed. Okay, bed, I guess you could argue.
Well, not really.
Not really, because on the balance sheet, can you put mattress? No, you cannot. When you come to a bank to apply for funding and you list your assets, I mean, even your cars we disregard, you know, and people love their cars, and people have R1 million cars and R2 million cars, and it's a nice to have. But if you look at the intrinsic value, the minute you drive that thing out of the dealership, it loses value. So that's not an asset. That's not, well, it's an asset, but it's not an investment. It's not good value for money.
What would you say to somebody who's currently watching this and they're drowning in credit card debt? How would you advise them to get out of the debt?
Once you're in the situation, don't judge yourself. Don't beat yourself up. As I said, I even with the education that I had, still out of necessity, ended up in debt. So I would say don't be hard on yourself, but start from where you are. A good practice that I have is every month I pull my bank statements and I check and see how I spend my money. The bulk of my money has to go towards investments because I'm in the process of accumulating wealth for myself. So what I try and do is prioritize that. And then whatever remains is that what I try to live off of. So what I would encourage people is live within a certain amount. Like realistically speaking, ask yourself, what do I need to live on? And in that amount, I'm not talking like coffees with girlfriends and nights out with girlfriends and sorbet. No. Like when, especially if you are serious about now getting out of this credit card debt situation, be as realistic as possible with yourself, but also be a little bit tougher and stricter with yourself. So start cutting out all of these unnecessary things. If you were going out, the hair was 600 Rand, I'm not saying stop doing your hair entirely, but try and spend less on that. And so what I'm basically trying to say is figure out the necessities. What is it that I need for food, shelter, transport, etc., and be familiar with what that amount is, and then see if there's any room after left over. Any surplus must now start going towards that credit card. If the credit card said the minimum amount due is 500 Rand, it doesn't matter, you pay and put in as much as you have. The minute you start reducing that debt is then now where you start to have a little bit more breathing room, because now you're going to pay off the credit card, but remember, you stay here. The amount you're spending, you don't now say, oh, I've paid down the credit card debt.
Now so babe,
let's go back. No. You're not at sorbet just quite yet. What you then start doing is, okay, that surplus that was now used to settle off the debt, now we start investing that. That's where you start having conversations with people like myself. And I would encourage people, the minute you start working, seek advice from a professional. And that person will then tell you, okay, how much, and ask you questions like, do you have a will? How much are you saving towards retirement? And then you can ask, why do I need to save towards retirement? What are the benefits? What are the tax implications of this versus that? So ideally what I'm saying to the people is, one, don't be hard on yourself. You need to have a healthy relationship with money. What people tend to do is either it brings guilt, shame, embarrassment. And I'm saying, I'm sharing with you my stories because hopefully somebody will learn from that and realize, wow, I'm not alone. If she could do it with her qualifications. So don't be ashamed. Just sit with where you are and say, okay, wow, at the moment, 90% of my income is going towards servicing debt. That's okay if you can, over time, bring that 90% down to 80% and then 70. But be kind to yourself. As I say, still do the hair, still do the nails, maybe do the nails at home.
Maybe buy that nail polish for 30 Rand and do the nails at home, and then the rest of the money go.
It'll boost your confidence so much when you start taking charge of your money. And because what you do is, which is what I did when the doctors were sending me the bills and I put them in the drawer. That doesn't help. By the time you actually deal with it, it's now an issue this big, when it could have been dealt with sooner. So yes, I would definitely say to them, start the habit of every month, know how much you spend, stick to that for as long as possible. Don't increase, even when you get an increase at work, even if you get a bonus at work, funnel that towards the debt, even the good debt, whether it's property, whether it's whatever else. Pay down debt as much as possible. We've seen what's happened with interest rates. They've gone up, I think, more than 4% just over a period of 2 years. So a lot of people are finding that, let's say, R1 million home, your installment has gone up by over 3,000 Rand a month. That's not accounting for inflation, where we've seen the prices of food go up, the prices of just about everything, petrol go up. So you always want to leave yourself breathing room. Don't find yourself at the end of the month where you're breathing a sigh of relief if you can just cover everything. That's not the space you want to be in. If that's the space where you are now, start working towards getting to a place where you can say, you know what, even if interest rates were to go up another 2%, another 3%, I'll be okay. Even if food prices were to continue, because we're in a state now where inflation is supposed to be peaking, we're not quite seeing that. And even if it peaks, it's not going to just collapse overnight. So you need to get used to the fact that things are going to be expensive for longer. Interest rates are going to remain higher for longer. So give yourself in your budget that room that's that breathing room just in case things go. And then obviously there's also the unexpected things that you need to consider, like losing a job. COVID, we saw a lot of people were retrenched. And these are people who were in supposedly secured roles, like internal audit. I saw people who I studied with who were in finance and traditionally safe roles who were retrenched. And so you always want to have that buffer as well to say, in the event that something does happen, can I survive for 6 months? But the fun part, really, and I know investments and money can sound boring to people. I love doing my spreadsheet every month because I've done that work where I'm now at a place where now it's like fun for me to say, okay, what do I do with this month's surplus? How do I invest it? How do I track how my investments are doing? And then how do I track that relative to my goal? Because I mean, I also want to be on helicopters and I also want to, right? I want to retire young.
Skip the traffic and just fly over it.
Like I also want that. But I also understand that it's going to take time and discipline. And where I need to make sacrifices, I'm happy to do that. If I need to get rid of DSTV for 6 months because it's more important to prioritize, let's say, school fees, if you're a mom, do that. You know, get real with it in that sense to say, but is this a necessity? No, it's not. You can live without DSTV. Get rid of it. And then rather prioritize petrol, food, etc.
And do what works for you. Don't do what your next door neighbor is doing.
Correct.
You know, just because they're watching DSTV doesn't mean you have to.
Absolutely.
Because you don't know what their budget looks like and stuff like that. What would you say is good debt? We always hear, especially you guys in financial services, you're like, no, get good debt and do this and do that, and you walk away and you're like, what just happened? Like, what is good debt? What are they talking? Do I get a credit card? Is that good debt? Is that not? And unfortunately, I don't know if that has happened to you. You know, when you go to the bank and you're trying to get advice and you're like trying to build up your credit rating and stuff, they tell you, no, get a credit card, go open a clothing store account and do this. But in the long run, then you find yourself, you know, almost snowballing to say, I started off with no debt.
Right.
And now here I am with a store account, a credit card, and I can't even qualify for that house I wanted in the first place.
Right.
So what would you say is good debt that will help you sort of like get a step closer to building that wealth?
That's actually a very good question. So it's a trick that financial services companies play on people to say you need a credit history for us to be able to give you more debt, right? So first demonstrate that you've got the discipline and the ability to pay down debt before we can actually lend you more money. But the trap is that people don't understand that like you said, it may start with one credit card and then now it just balloons into all sorts of other debt. And then you go to the same bank that said, we can't lend to you because you don't have a credit record. And they say, oh no, sorry, blacklisted.
Now you got too much.
No, now you've got a mark against you. No, we can't actually, we don't even want to bank you.
Exactly. And you're stuck there like, what did I do wrong? I did exactly what you said.
So again, very important is the advice piece that I spoke about. When you go to a bank, you speak to different people from different parts of the bank. When you're speaking to somebody whose job is to lend and their targets are for lending, that's what they're going to do. They're going to give you debt. Obviously, there are parameters that apply, right? So in other words, your affordability, etc., they will check that. But then the same bank will employ a refilwe, whose job it is to look after your investments and make sure that you are covered and you're protected. So what you want to do is have the conversation first, I would recommend, with the advisor to say, this is my plan. This is actually what I want to do with my life. I want to retire at 40. I want to send my kids off to school overseas in so many years' time. I want to do A, B, C, D, E, F, G. They will speak to that piece that I spoke about and actually help you with that budget to say, oh, okay, let's start with your bank statements. How are you spending money? What are your money habits? And then what then happens is from then, when you start to get debt, that conversation, when you're having it with the advisor, it will be the good debt that you refer to. So the advisor might say to you, I know you want to get that R500,000 Rand car. I know you've been waiting your whole life. You studied hard. You've worked hard. At 25, do you mind just holding off a little bit? Let's build your retirement portfolio. Let's build your investment portfolio. And then you might even be able to buy that very car cash at 35, at 40, but by then you've got a property portfolio. So the good debt would be debt that goes to fund things like property. And assets beget more assets. The wealthy people have more access to more because they've got the assets in the balance sheet. What happens with us and when I say us, I'm talking about my people, is that we can be income statement rich. So that means that because we qualified and we studied, we get these jobs that pay us really well, but that is income statement, that's money coming in. And then by the same token, the way it comes in is the way it goes out again. Because we're spending it, right, to pay the car, to pay this, to pay that. When we look at the balance sheet side of it, and again, I'm not judging anyone, I understand what it is to not have and to work hard so that you can have. And then once you get to that stage where you have, to be told, no,
not to do it.
Defer your happiness another 5 years, another 10 years. I get it. You know, delay that gratification again. So I know it's difficult, but when you start early, there's a concept called compounding, where money, basically, you can get the growth on top of the growth, on top of the growth, on top of the growth. When you start investing at the age of 18 versus somebody who starts investing at the age of 35, the one who starts at 35 has to start at a much higher amount than the one who starts at 18, just so that the two of them can arrive at the same place, let's say at the age of 50. So the sooner you start investing, the better. So to get back to the balance sheet thing, the idea would be, when we do start getting that income and the money starts coming in, try to reduce the amount you're spending on the expenses. As I said, stick within an amount that you spend. The rest must start funneling towards the balance sheet. That's when now you start investing in an investment portfolio. That's when you start investing in property. If you are entrepreneurial, you can even fund a business. Those are the things that we talk about. Now you're starting to become balance sheet rich. What then happens is, when you've got assets on a balance sheet, we use that at a bank as collateral. So now we use the very same assets that you've now accumulated to lend you even more money, and you even get more preferential rates than a person who has no assets, right? So you see how the wealth keeps on building and keeps on building, keeps on building. And that's pretty much the trick, and what I want to impart to people is to say, when you're delaying gratification in your 20s and your 30s, like couples, young couples that get married in their 20s, I mean, Black people must understand there's a lot that you are doing with your money that other people, other groups of people are not doing. So in other words, you saving for lobola. You are having to maybe first build a home back home. Black tax, right? Before you build your own. All of those things might mean you actually only start saving for retirement at 35. Because then when you got married, then your wife was like, no, we are CAs, so we have to live in Bryanston. And it's got to be at least. I mean, we've got to look great. And we've got to go out, because now we must travel overseas.
And let's get a car that makes us look like we're happily married.
Right? Because it must look good. The optics are so important. And then when we do Instagram, people must see us traveling golf courses and luxurious hotels and then you fall into the trap. And then you come talk to me and you're 40 and you're getting a divorce. And now I look at your balance sheet, I'm like, you earn so much. Where are the assets? And
where's all of this going?
Where did it all go? And I mean, divorce is traumatic and painful enough as it is. But now imagine now having to deal with the fact that you are starting from scratch at 40. So those are the things I want people to just remember: is good debt is investments. It's things that grow in value over time, like property, like profitable businesses. That's good debt. So you can borrow to fund good debt or good investments, if I can put it like that.
This is not to say people mustn't buy cars. I know somebody's like, wait, what? So I mustn't buy a car. Buy a car, but buy one you can afford. Live within that limit, right?
That's it.
Get one that's within the limit, instead of getting a car that's like 3 million rands and then you're spending 90% of your salary paying off the car.
Right.
Now, with all of this said, right, can somebody come to you and say, you know, here I am, we just got married, or here I am, I'm a single mom, I have these children, and I want to do something for them. You know, I don't know what that is, but I need to leave some sort of money or something for them. Can they come to you, and, you know, what advice would you give them?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's brilliant. Please do. As a matter of fact, no matter your situation, circumstances now. So in other words, even if you are that person who's overly indebted and you've just got credit card bills, please still go seek out the advice and have somebody kind of walk that journey with you. I know that there are advisors out there. I mean, I think sometimes the reputation out there is that people just want to sell you products and earn commission. So in the space, for example, where I work, I'm salaried, I don't earn a commission. So pushing products is not really, not how I'm remunerated, but I do understand that there is that side of it, so be careful. But there are very good advisors out there who will start and meet you where you are. So you're that single mom and you're saying, I don't have much, but I'd like to start.
Yeah.
And there are so many options available to you where, depending on the amount you have, so some people can start with a whole trust where they say, because I'm a single mom, I want to set something up that in the event that I die, because you can appoint trustees to on that trust, so it can be your mom, but then you also might think, okay, but what if something happens to my mom, maybe my sister, maybe, and then maybe you can even, so let's say you open the trust with the bank can also act as corporate trustee. You set out what your wishes are. I want my kids to do, I'm setting up this trust because I want my kids to do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, so that's one way to do it. Another way to do it is, more importantly, more than anything, is having that will that will specify what must happen, especially if you're a single mom. Please, anybody, if you remember nothing else I say, please get a will and make sure that you can stipulate what your wishes are. The last thing you want, and I've seen this a lot, it's quite scary to realize even wealthy people sometimes don't have wills.
Wow.
And a person will pass on with 100 million and now people are scrambling and running around, and it can take years. And you can imagine the family infighting that happens as well, right? And sometimes you see tragic situations, like in the event of the husband passing away. Not only is the wife grieving about the loss of the husband, now the family comes and says, wife, Chuck.
Yeah, it's all money now.
You killed our son.
You killed our son. Now we're taking the money
now
away
we're taking
from
the
you.
cars, we're taking the house,
Yeah.
all kinds of things. But if there are documents in place, you've got a will in place, and it will mitigate some of those things to some extent. So for me, I see money as a way for women to get their power back. I think it's empowering. But yes, start where you are. Go and talk to somebody. And if that person is not right, even if you have to talk to 3 or 4 people until you find an advisor who relates to you and sees you and understands you and is not out to see how much money they can make from you. In other words, there are times when a client will come to me. For example, I had a client call me last week and say, Rafilia, I've got this R1 million and I'm thinking about either putting it in a property, or you and I had spoken about increasing my offshore exposure, etc., etc. But long story short, I ended up telling her to take the money and putting it in the property. And what's interesting about that is, if I had been commission based, I may have been tempted because an additional $1 million is more commission for me. I could have maybe just, and people do trust us and our expertise. I could have found a reasonable explanation and basis to say, put the money in this investment and then earn more commission. But I ended up saying to her, just on the final analysis of things, having done a needs analysis with her, I said, let's actually put the money into the property. So you want a person you can trust. And sometimes I think banks, we can be very transactional with people. In other words, are you worth my time? So when you walk into the office, I size you up head to toe, and I'm like, okay, Louis Vuitton bag, income statement rich, probably doesn't have a balance sheet. And then my whole attitude towards you is condescending and dismissive. And then what people then do is then they walk away and then they don't come back. But I would encourage, if you do have a negative experience like that, please, there are other people who love and are passionate about advice and empowering people. It's just a matter that it might take you 1 or 2 or 3 times.
3 tries.
Exactly, before you find a person who's a good fit for you. And even if that relationship, because sometimes relationships end, if that relationship no longer serves you, you can change your advisor. If you feel that person is charging you a fee and they're not earning that fee and they're just not looking after you, they're not even taking care and making sure that as your life situation happens and changes, that they are adapting your plan, your investment plan. They basically have come up with a proposal for you, put you to the side, and now they're earning passive income off of that investment. So these are the things that it comes with time and it comes with experience. But wherever you are, start.
Don't wait until you're out of debt. I mean, in a way we're saying get out of debt, but don't wait until you're out of debt to find out what you can do. Get the advice now so you are prepared for when you do get out of debt, you hit the ground running. Absolutely. You spoke earlier about having investment accounts and stuff. I mean, the only investment account I know, Dizzy knows it a whole lot more, but it's, the normal ones from the bank where you click on the app and you're like, oh, let me open a 32-day notice account. And 24 hours sounds good. Let's do that so I can get my money whenever I want to within a day. Are those good? Are they good things to have, or it's just honestly a waste of time?
So, and this will come back to the advice piece.
Yeah.
And I'm going to keep going back and hopping on about advice. And I know your audience is going to think Rufilo is really punting this advice thing.
Yeah.
But guys, it's valuable because those are the ones that are readily accessible. The minute you bank with a bank, they have access to your information. So they can start selling you insurance products, they can start selling you 32 days notice or a fixed deposit, readily accessible. The value of advice is that it starts with you and it says, okay, how old are you? And then it says, okay, how much do you earn? And then it says, so what assets do you have? Do you have protection for those assets? So that car that you have, do you have adequate insurance for that? Do you have life policy? So in the event that you pass on, what's going to happen? Is your estate adequately funded? Does it have sufficient liquidity that your loved ones are not going to be scrambling? Or is it going to be a situation where now we've got to sell properties and we've got to sell all kinds of things because there are people you need to pay on death, right? Immediately. SARS.
Yeah.
Yeah. SARS is saying, yes, we are. You're sorry. You're grieving.
Yeah,
we've been taxing you your whole life. Now no. So they come in, right? And those people need to be paid like immediately, almost right away. So the value of advice is going to say, one, do you have adequate protection? Do you have adequate insurance? Do you have adequate life cover? The 32-day fixed or 32-day notice account might be something you use just to park cash temporarily to cover needs as and when you need things. But in terms of actually growing your money, you do not grow wealth in a 32 days account. Those accounts tend to give you the kind of interest that, if you are lucky, is above inflation, but over the long term, generally those types of investments don't give you above inflation returns. So with inflation sitting where it is now, I think it's above 7% at the moment. If you are sitting in a cash 32 days or fixed deposit or something, some other investments that's giving you a 6% return, you must understand that in real terms, you're actually eroding your money. You're becoming poorer every year. That's just taking inflation into account. And then add on the fact that relative to other currencies in the world, the rand is getting weaker. The rand at now 19 rand something to the US dollar. I mean, when I first went, when I finished articles, the rand was at 6 rand something to the dollar. It's now at 19 rand to the dollar. So if you just think about it, just in pure rand terms, I've become so much poorer without even doing anything. And why is it important for us to pay attention to the exchange rate is because what do we make in South Africa and what do we export? A lot of the things that you and I use day to day, we import. So we're buying it with the weak rand, we're buying dollars, we're buying euros, we're buying pounds. So you always need advice so that a person can say to you, please don't DIY this. Don't try to figure this out on your own, because you can't know what you don't know, and you won't know what to think of and what questions to ask. So I would say think of the 32-day account or any type of cash deposit accounts that the bank will offer you as a place to park cash for needs as and when you need money. But that is not a vehicle for a long-term investment. No.
That makes a lot of sense. But I do know that when you go to the bank, that's what they tell you.
Absolutely.
I mean, I was talking to my banker, and you would think a banker would actually say to you, okay, let's actually get you with somebody who's going to give you proper advice. But my banker was like, no, you can have like a 32-day notice account. Because I was like, you know what? We find ourselves in this vicious cycle where we have the surplus money at the end of the month, and then we're like, let's blow it. And I was like, that's not entirely good. We can't always blow money. So let's put it somewhere so that, you know, it can at least grow. And the banker was like, yeah, sure, put it in a 32-day notice account.
So that ties in with what I said earlier. When you're speaking to the bank, always ask yourself where this person sits. A banker gets lending targets. A banker might get targets on deposits. So it might be for their own personal targets in their best interest to give you a fixed deposit or a 32-day notice. And then you might speak to Refilwe, who, let's say in this instance, I'm a financial advisor who earns commission. Then you come speak to the same to Refilwe, who works at the same bank, but now I earn commission. So it's in my interest to sell you as many insurance policies as I can sell you, to sell you all kinds of retirement annuities and all, because for every product I'm charging a fee for advice. So you always have to, I mean, I know it's tough because people are sitting there thinking, how do we figure this out? How do we navigate this? Trust your gut, trust your intuition. When you have the conversation with the person, ask them, how are you remunerated in the bank? You know, what sort of targets do you get? Just so that you can get a sense, because incentives are what drive behavior. So you're well within your right to understand exactly what fees am I going to be charged on this? What is the value that I'm going to get in return for those fees? And you touched on the surplus. The surplus is, for me, where I said that's where the magic happens. If you can get to a stage in your life where you've covered your expenses and there's money left over, that's where you get creative. That's where you get to have fun. Because that's where you can, if you have one property, you can now think about getting an additional property, an investment property this time. And then you use these two properties as collateral to fund another third property. And remember, these investment properties will be structured in such a way that the rental income you get will fund the debt that you're getting. So net, you're not even taking any money out of your own pocket to fund property 3, 4, 5. So if you get into the habit of, let me use the surplus to build a balance sheet, to build assets, then I'm going to use these assets and leverage these assets to get more assets. That's wealth creation. And then think about it in the long term. I have money today, and as I said, what is this money going to be worth 5 years from now? If you take inflation into account, 100 Rand today could be worth only 50 Rand in 5 years time if you put it in an investment or a savings account where it's not keeping up with inflation. But the same 100 Rand, if we say invested in the market and we invested in shares, might actually grow at inflation plus 6%. So the person who's investing in the cash solution that you get with a deposit at a bank, and a person who's investing in a portfolio that's got shares, and not just South African shares, offshore shares, that 100 Rand is going to look vastly different 5 years from now. And again, that's the value of the advice. So the surplus, I would say, look to use that to create wealth.
That's actually some pretty solid stuff he's saying there, because I mean, we Black people, we know this. We like to see our money. And if somebody tells you it's in some investment somewhere, you're like, what? It's easier if you can see the money. And that's why I feel like even back home, I'm from Ziras, right? And it's like a one-way street town. Like everything you get in this little space.
I see.
So when they go to the bank, they get told, no, just a 32-day notice account. My dad retired about almost a little over a year ago. And he had all this money and with no advice. So there we were scrambling, trying to figure out like, okay, so now what do you do? Because obviously you can't blow all this money in a year, because retirement is so long. You're so healthy. You clearly have a lot of years ahead of you. We go to the bank. We're like, what do we do? No, you can like put in a 32-day notice account. And I was like, surely that can't be. Because 32-day notice account, you can access that money in 32 days, which is not okay. You're going to end up doing exactly what you're trying to avoid. So you saying, you know, the advice, getting back to get the advice. And even though you guys are amazing, but you have these giant terms: liquidation, assets, liabilities, this, that, the other thing. I remember when we were getting married and they're like, what's your liabilities and stuff? And I'm just like, I did 1 year of accounting. And this was like 2008. So can we slow down?
Lucky you.
And I was like, let's slow down and try to be on the same page. So hearing you say what you just said, I hope somebody's watching and actually going, oh my gosh, so I actually can go and get some financial advice. You don't have to do anything about it. You know, you just have to get the advice. And then let it stew, sit on it, do whatever it is you got to do, but just get the advice.
I love what you just said, because you not only don't have to do anything about it, you don't have to only get it from one person. So go speak to 4, 5, 6 and test them out. And then come back home, like you said, sit with it. And then figure it out and say, okay, I think this person made a lot more sense. I actually think I click with this person. I actually think this person I could actually build a relationship with over time. I just want to come back to the point you made about your dad, because that's something that's very close to my heart. A lot of our people get to retirement age and they can't wait to get that 1/3 lump sum, right? And unfortunately it ends up going towards things like cars, and it ends up going towards things like extending your house. And at that stage, usually the children have left. You're actually, you know, it's an empty nest. And that's actually the time where I feel like, because I say this to my parents who are both retired, this is when you should be living your best life. You know, you've worked so hard your whole life. This is when you're traveling. This is when the two of you should be going on dates. This is when you two should be having so much fun, holding hands, and unfortunately, because again, it's just maybe our socialization and lack of understanding, you don't even have to take the lump sum, by the way. It's an option to take the lump sum.
My dad took the lump sum.
Right.
Because he wanted to see his money. Like I said,
I get it, because again, you've worked so hard.
Yeah, you worked so hard. And that not trusting the system.
Yes.
You know, you don't know. Just now I say, okay, give me a little bit of the money. And it's like, no. Next thing you know, something happened and now the money is not there.
I know. So ideally, what you do is, for those of us who are still coming up, because we can make different choices, is you work with your advisor during that accumulation phase, when you're still building towards retirement. And it will take many forms. It doesn't have to be a retirement annuity fund. It could be that you're entrepreneurial, so it could be your business, right? So it could be you own shares in a company. It could be property portfolios, whatever it is. The advisor then works with you, and you come up with a plan, and then you save, right? And then by the time you're approaching retirement, this is not a conversation you're having 6 months before retirement. This is a conversation you've been having all these years. So when it comes, remember, the advice I will also give you at 25 or 35 is different to the advice I'm going to give you at 50 as you're approaching retirement. You can be more aggressive when you're younger. In other words, we can give you a lot more exposure to shares and assets like that tend to be volatile and up and down. But in the long term are the ones where wealth creation generally tends to happen. So I would say to people, the value of advice, even if you are 50 or 55 or you're approaching retirement, right? You've even cashed in the lump sum, but maybe it's sitting in that fixed deposit. It's not too late. Have a conversation then about that money that's sitting in that 32-day notice account or that fixed deposit to say, I'm 60, I'm retired. What are my options? Because I need to fund a life now, right? Unless you're going to start working again. Some people do in retirement because they run out of money. This whole idea that you're putting it in a deposit account, it's not keeping up with inflation. And inflation basically is the cost of living. So your medical aid keeps going up. Your food keeps going up. Your rates and taxes keep going up. But your fixed deposit or 32-day notice is going up at 5%. These are going up at 11%, 12%. Food inflation, 14%. So just to keep up with the cost of things, you need an investment that's going to grow by more than that each year on average. So that's where I would say to people, if you don't need the lump sum, or if you were going to use it to buy a car, people can tell I hate cars. If it were up to me, I would just ban people from buying cars, but it's not my choice. If you were going to use it to buy a car or to extend your house, etc., I would say maybe just chill with the money for a little bit. Just don't make any rash decisions. Seek advice, speak to multiple people, and then decide, do I even need this 1/3? Because maybe you just leave it. And then what we then do is generally you purchase what we call an annuity with it. So then you go and then you either go to an insurance company, they'll give you an annuity, or you can come to the bank, it doesn't really matter where, and then they can then pay you an income now during retirement for the rest of your life. There are different kinds, and again, that's where the value of advice also comes in. But this is now to make sure that, okay, now during retirement, my expenses are going to be covered. If my medical aid is going to be covered, and as I said, ideally, I think our parents should be having a ball. They should be having a good time. But your money habits, if you haven't inculcated them from a young age, will cost you big time. And at that age, it's too late.
It's too late.
And so if you haven't yet bought the car, I would say, leave that 1/3 alone. Go get advice, and then don't just leave it in a savings account. Please speak to somebody and let the person help you manage that money properly, so that you can just enjoy yourself. I mean, you've worked hard, you've earned it, right?
Yeah, you really have earned it. We're in the era where social media, everybody's becoming an influencer, which means they're basically self-employed and they're making their own money.
Right.
Can they come to you then, about, financial advice and building up wealth? Is this something that a bank would recognize as a job?
Yes. So the bank recognizes money, not necessarily.
Yes, true. Yeah.
So as long as you don't come by it from drug dealing, human trafficking, selling drugs, we will definitely help you. So whether you're an influencer, whether you're selling tomatoes on the street corner, we will first look at, as I said, that balance sheet is usually very key and very telling. So my advice to the influencer would be, if you do have all these multiple sources of income coming in, remember, we're not looking for income statement. We're looking for balance sheet. Get into the habit of putting that money into investments. And so that's where you can definitely, by all means, come and speak to somebody like myself, and then we can start to craft that for you. But you're also a business owner, right? You're an influencer, but you're an entrepreneur. You're self-employed. So your business is actually the business that, let's say most of our clients actually are people who have run their own businesses, and then at the age of 50, 60, they sell it or whatever, and then they've got this huge lump sum, 50, 60 million, and then they say, can you then manage this for me? So it's exactly the same concept with somebody who's self-employed or who's an influencer. It's just that your business is you. It's your brand. But as long as there's money coming in, same concepts. Money is neutral. So as I said, as long as you're not doing illegal things with it, the advice would be the same.
It's so intimidating. I mean, money on its own is such an intimidating subject. And if you're a woman, I feel like it's 2 times worse.
Right.
Even when you come to the bank and you're trying to ask for advice, you walk in sheepishly and you're just hoping somebody will just see all your problems and just give you this perfectly packaged solution that's going to fit your problems. But unfortunately, you always get what you're not looking for. I can't tell you how many times I've, when I was still growing up and I would be looking for solid advice, like, what do I do with this money? And they tell you, no, just open an overdraft and just keep it there. You never know when you're going to need it. And unfortunately, I did that not once, but twice.
Right.
And I ended up using the money. And, I'm like, okay, I really didn't need the money in the first place, but now the money is spent. Now I have to give back the money, and it becomes this huge vicious cycle where you need solid financial advice, but then you get the wrong advice. And the one time I actually spoke to a financial expert, oh my gosh, I was so confused.
Right.
I was like, you know what, never mind. Like, it's fine, never mind. Leave it at that.
Right.
And so hearing you speak today and simplifying it and making it make sense actually is very helpful, because it's not overwhelming.
Yes.
It's something that a mere mortal can do.
Right.
All I have to do is make an appointment with you.
Yes.
And then we get it over and done with. It doesn't have to be complicated.
And the get it over and done with, because that sounds like a doctor's appointment. I don't want you to dread coming to the bank. Yes, we can be serious, because money is serious in the sense that it is power, it is influence, it is options. And for women specifically, it's I can't emphasize that enough. It is very, very important. But get to a place where the way you approach your nails, the way you approach your hair, approach your bank statement.
We've touched on investments, we've touched on good debt, bad debt, all of that fun stuff. As parents, myself and Dizzy Basil and a single mom out there, other moms, families, we want to go to the bank to start something for our kids, right? Do we need to have some sort of minimum amount of money? Or is it just a matter of just start the account and wherever you have a surplus, just throw it in there?
So your advisor will obviously do an assessment of your current situation. So they will see your income statement, they'll have a look at your balance sheet, they'll ask you if you've got investments elsewhere, do you currently have a retirement annuity somewhere else? So they will pull all that information together and then get a real sense of how much you actually have. Where the minimums come in is that these institutions, the way they've been set up, so for example, Alan Gray will say to you, for you to open an investment account with us, the very minimum that you need is 500 Rand for us to do a monthly debit order with you. And it is because that they've done the research where they've said it's not profitable for us to open a new account for somebody who's paying us less than 500 Rand. So you've got to remember that you're dealing with companies, and companies are all about the bottom line and profit. According to their analysis, they've decided that 500 Rand is the minimum. When you come to other parts, so for example, when you come to Nedbank Private Wealth, yes, whilst we do look after you irrespective of how much you're earning, but from a segmentation point of view, you might be looked after by different people depending on how much you earn and assets wise. So for example, I'm sitting in the private wealth space. in that space, you need to earn above 2 million to qualify to bank in that space.
Yeah.
And then also, or you need to have investable assets worth 5 million. And then usually what we'll say is to open an investment, the very minimum that we will need is 1 million. But I would say to people, don't necessarily worry about that. That can be aspirational, right? Because you can grow and transition through all those different segments in the bank. Go and speak to somebody who will then say, okay, for you, I think the right thing is let's start with the debit order. Let's actually start with the unit trust fund. And then get into just that habit of saving money. And then what happens is when you start, that's where the education piece comes in. Because imagine if you're meeting with your advisor, let's say every quarter or every 6 months or every year, you get to ask questions like, wait, I put in 500 Rand, so that was 6,000 Rand last year. Why is it only sitting at 5,500? And then your advisor can explain to you, oh, this is what happened in the market. This is what happened to the Rand. This is what, and then you start asking questions, and then you ask like, no, but wait, what did you specifically actually put my money in? No, in this portfolio, I've given you exposure to the top 40 largest companies in South Africa. And then you're like, okay, but is that good enough? Should I also have exposure to things outside of South Africa? So it's in you actually just starting. I wouldn't necessarily worry about the minimums. If you speak to somebody and they make you feel lesser than in any way, and you feel judged, I think you already know that's not the person.
That's not your person.
That's not your person, right?
On to the next one.
You move on to the next person. The next person sees you where you are and the potential of where you could end up. And they will work with you because they see the sincerity and the willingness, and they will craft the plan that says, okay, this is what you can start with. So yes, different institutions have their own minimums. It's not standard across all of them. But again, that individual is the one who will then channel you appropriately.
And it will depend on what you want. So just because you don't have the minimum doesn't mean you shouldn't go. So essentially just go. You know, just go. Book that appointment and go.
Just go. The minimum is probably just you talking yourself out of it.
To say, I don't have to do it. I don't have money now.
Because I've already warned you. You are going to talk to people who are going to put you off. I've already made that clear. You still need to go back and find the right person. It's worth it. The bulk of our life is spent working. So you don't want to get to 50, 60 and realize that, oh my goodness, all that money that I earned, all that hard work, because that's time you'll never get back. I have so little to show for it. It's quite sad for me when I see people in their 50s, 60s, and really they barely have enough for themselves for retirement, let alone leaving a legacy. I'm all about multi-generational wealth. I'd rather sacrifice my own comfort and rather leave money for not even just my children but my grandchildren, because I've seen what institutional wealth does. And I think as Black people we need to start thinking just beyond the, okay guys, Maslow's hierarchy, we got to this level, we've met our needs, we've got houses, we've got cars, we're taking our kids to good schools, we can afford to shop and eat where we want. But that's not where it stops. We need to now always constantly think about the next level. What businesses are we building? What communities are we building? So that we can be in a position of strength. You know, it's difficult to build your own bank. It's difficult to have any kind of independence if you don't have that collective mindset as well, to say, guys, let's think institutionally as well, not just as long as me and my family are okay, because we've seen as long as you and your family are okay, but 90% of the country is not okay. It's only a matter of time before that instability and you're not okay. And as Africans, it's just innate. It's inherent in us. When you are eating and the person next to you is not eating, it eats at you. So we need to think beyond, okay, once I've taken care of myself, I'm okay. My loved ones are okay. Even beyond that, let me actually build multi-generational wealth. Let me actually build institutional wealth so that we can create jobs, so that we can actually maybe try in some ways to fix, a lot of the issues that we're dealing with in this country.
Wow, you've shared a whole lot of stuff, and I hope you guys' pages are like overrunning by now. There's not enough space anymore. But just in closing, what advice, what would you say is your key takeaway that somebody sitting across this video, watching and listening, what do you want them to take out of this video?
It's going to sound very unusual, but I would say you have to have a comfortable relationship with money. Not make money your friend, because that sounds so strange, but don't have an adversarial relationship with money. Don't be intimidated by money. don't have any guilt or just any negativity around money. Money is neutral. See it as a way for you to fulfill your dreams, for you to make an impact in the community if you want to, for you to look after your loved ones, for you to take care of yourself, for you to enjoy life. And so start just changing your mindset around money. Have that, as I said, if you need to have some time alone with your glass of wine, with your cup of tea, face the money, look at it, laugh at yourself if you need to. Like, I've made so many silly mistakes, laugh about it, and then ask yourself, okay, I think here, I remember Rafila said something about this, jot that down and make a note, right? And then say, I need to learn more about that. I heard a little bit about wills, but I'm still unclear about that. Make a note, jot that down and say, I need to learn about that. So in other words, build your knowledge base. So start with first getting rid of all the negativity around it, all the regrets around it, and then just start to say, okay, fine, I'm going to embrace this thing, because you're not getting away from money, unfortunately. This is something that follows you through to death. So change your attitude around it. Start being positive about it. Start having a positive relationship with it. Start having fun with it. And then start using it, because you can really use money in a positive way and in a very impactful way. But to be able to do that, it starts with you. So to take those steps that I mentioned, be patient with yourself. It takes time, because habits are built over time. Be patient with yourself. Have a person you can call, somebody that you can consult, who can keep you honest. Like I have a friend, that Louis Vuitton bag, I gotta be agreed, no more.
You can't be buying that every other month.
Right.
No.
And if you're friends with Rafilo, you're never gonna buy a car ever again. No, I won't judge you, because at the end of the day, as I said, it's something for you to have fun with, something for you to enjoy. But I want people to learn to prioritize money differently, look at it differently. And it's a journey, right? You're gonna make mistakes, it's fine. Learn and pick it up and keep going, but continue to learn. You don't arrive, I'm still learning. I'm still learning about money every day. So that's, I think, in a nutshell.
Your mic drop moment. All right, so I'm already going to be setting up an appointment with you, right? But where can they find you? So if they want to set up an appointment, they want to come have a chat with you, where can they find you?
Okay, so the best place now is LinkedIn. And I've what's nice about there as well is I do tend to post about what's currently happening, and it's almost a blog information, because I want people to get comfortable with the concepts that you mentioned earlier. Assets, liabilities, and things like that should eventually, you must just be like, oh, I know what that is. Roll your eyes like, Rafila, come on, challenge me. So that's the idea, is eventually I want to build a blog where I will be imparting knowledge and helping people just make sense of the world around them. It can be scary, like you go to the petrol pump today and then it costs you this much, and then a week later it costs you that much more. So you need somebody to kind of distill to you what's actually happening, what's happening in the US, how it has a direct impact on how much you're paying for petrol at the petrol station. So I think what I'm hoping to do with that LinkedIn page is just to connect the dots for the people, and then to say to them, you go about your day to day and leave the money stuff to me. Because that's what I do. That's what I enjoy. It's fun for me. But find that person or those people, build that community of people for whom you can actually have these money discussions with. Don't just have the one conversation. Like, I love what you're doing. I actually watched the video with your mom. It's very, very important for all of us, even in our families, especially couples within the relationship. You have to have, don't leave it and say that one is good with money. Never, ladies, please. Never say he's good with money, I trust him. Please don't. And come talk to me, and leave him at home and come talk to me. But LinkedIn is, I think, is the best place where people can find me.
Okay. Well, thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
And sharing all of your knowledge with us. I learned a lot. I know, like I said, I can't stress this enough. I'm having, like, when we switch off this, I'm setting up my appointment because we need to have a chat, a serious conversation.
Absolutely.
You guys, I hope you learned something from this video. Go ahead and comment down below and let us know, what was your key takeout from this video? What did you learn? What are you going to do? I know for a fact, you know, at the beginning of this series, I said, we are in debt, you know, we're all learning, we've made money mistakes, but it's not too late. It's really not too late. We can turn our ships around and we can start building our wealth. And so, you know, she just gave us, she just gave us all the helpful tools. And if it's still unclear, don't be afraid to set up an appointment. Even if, you know, you two still intimidated to meet her in person, pop her a message on LinkedIn.
Yes.
I'm going to link her profile down below so that you can just click on the link and it'll take you there. Nobody has to know. It'll be your secret. You know, we're not just making these videos for fun. Like I was saying, this was a need. It was selfishly for me and Dizzy Basil, but obviously we're making it a shared experience so that we can all learn together. We can all be wealthy together. So tomorrow, when you guys see us bowling and we're living our best lives,
right?
You know, you don't say we left you guys behind, you know, because this is us now, you know, bringing you guys into our circle so that we can all achieve bigger things together. So I say all this to say, this is where we're going to leave it today. I hope you enjoyed watching the video. Thumbs it up. Don't forget to follow her on LinkedIn and of course send her all the messages and all your questions. Do they have to pay?
No. Not for questions.
It's for free. So please jump on that bandwagon. Do not miss this opportunity. And until next time, guys, we'll see you on the next video. Bye, besties. And cut.